This is going to be a panel discussion headed by Jasmine Logaraj. Jasmine is the head of cybersecurity projects and consulting practice for the ANZ region with the global tech consulting firm Capgemini. Jasmine specialises in cybersecurity and risk, having come from a career weaving through neuroscience, law and cybersecurity. Jasmine will introduce the guests for this panel. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Jeremy. As a young woman with a background in neuroscience, law and cybersecurity, I'm often met with surprise when people find out that I head up the cybersecurity consulting practice at Capgemini. Why do you think that's the case? Is it because of our inherent biases still prevalent in our industry around culture, career, gender and age? Today I'm joined by 4 cybersecurity professionals who each have their own shared experience and pathway to the security industry. Each of them understands the importance of diversity in fostering success and innovation in the industry. Constance Yap is a senior security specialist at Capgemini Australia in the security operations team in a SOC team environment. Not only is she a mother of 2, but she's also got a background in business development, retail and hospitality. So she brings a very diverse experience to the security industry. Ricky Block is a cybersecurity recruitment specialist for Talenza with over 10 years of experience in the recruitment industry, recruiting the best cyber talent for ASX 10 through to SME businesses. Suraj Singh is a regional sales manager for Silverfort and has over 15 years of experience in telco, finance and IT, and he understands the importance of technology and people. And last but not least, Luke Sherry is a director at Cordamenta with an expertise in cybersecurity, privacy and technology. And he has served as CTO for Napoleon ANZ and has spearheaded many successful IT projects. As I introduce today's panelists, you may have noticed that they all have a different background and yet they're all successful in the security industry. So today I'd like to deep dive into what diversity means to them, why do you think it's important in the industry, and also what can be done to better support diversity. So I'd like to start with you, Suraj, on culture diversity. Why do you think cultural diversity is necessary to improve innovation in security?
Sure, thanks. Really good question. So from a security perspective, if you think about, in my world, cybersecurity, there is a variety of technologies, data, people that you need to secure. So from a cultural diversity perspective, I think the key there is the word perspective. Different, in being of Indian heritage as well, I can tell you that my family are fairly risk averse, shall we say. There are other cultures out there that take a little bit more risk. So just that perspective alone, I think is required inside of the industry to be able to cover a broad range of scenarios.
Yeah, you raise a good point. And also I think in terms of how business is done in certain cultures too, and what's considered respectful as well is important. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
For culture diversity as well, do you think security organisations, and this one's for you, Ricky, do you think security organisations make enough of a conscious effort to remove cultural biases when hiring for their team?
So I'd say twofold, yes and no. A very political answer to that. Some businesses will do all sorts of things where they sanitize names off resumes through the screening process. Not many do that though. To your point earlier about diversity of teams, some of the most successful leaders that I know of promote diversity of culture. And it's funny because diversity in modern day times often just means females. Like a lot of companies talk about diversity, they mean having a gender split. The best, some of the most successful people who I know that run large sales security teams talk about having a blend between different cultures for those perspectives that you mentioned, cultural perspectives, different religions as well. So do companies do a lot towards that? I don't think many make active efforts to screen out different cultures. for better or worse. More could definitely be done. There's definitely, in Australia, there's inherent biases towards having local experience as opposed to experience overseas. So, yeah, I'd probably argue that not much is done actually, even as I unpack that verbally, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that. I remember in my years, because I grew up in Malaysia, and my teachers and my lecturers in university actually said, when you put in your resume, you got to put in your gender, you got to put in your religion and your home address. And I was like, why? I was questioning that as a teenager. I think that's unnecessary information. Shouldn't you just be focusing on our qualifications as an individual? So, yeah, I got a rap on my knuckles for that, for questioning, the whole.
And see, I'd argue there's norms for resumes based on location. So when people from other cultures come to Australia, they'll often include even their passport number on their resume, and that would be like really, really frowned upon.
Exactly.
Which opens
Privacy.
up a whole nother can of worms with privacy, right? Because if we as a recruitment agency have got our database would have 500,000 people across Australia in it, and if everybody's resume has got their home address, if we were to have a breach, that's a big issue, a whole nother problem.
I lied about my age. I made myself sound much older than I was back then.
So I'd like to move on to another passion of mine, neuroscience. So as a neuroscientist, something that a term that I've been aware of for a while is neurodiversity. And I see that there's a lot of traction now in the industry and support for neurodiversity. That makes me very happy. So I think neurodiverse teams bring a out-of-a-box approach to security and actually bring a more successful approach as well, being able to tackle a problem from multiple angles. So, Luke, as a neurodiversity ally, what does neurodiversity mean to you, and why do you think it's important to have neurodiverse members?
Yeah, thank you. I am an ally, as you just said, and I have. But see, the way that I look at neurodiversity is maybe a little bit different to other people. As we've said here, we've got so much diversity up here in terms of gender, looks, backgrounds, and I think neurodiversity is not much different to that. There may be a stigma attached to it, and that being, people that have a different capacity, perhaps mental capacity, but it's more, I see it as people have strengths and challenges. And so in the workforce, it's just about tolerance and understanding and working with those people and bringing those strengths and challenges into the workplace. So what can that be? When we talk about neurodiverse people, there's some people that are maybe not the best person, not happiest at the Christmas party, but they're very good with crunching the numbers and doing the analytics on the data side of things. So that's how I look at it.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to comment, because I find this topic, particularly this topic, fascinating. And what I'm going to try to say, maybe a little bit, not confrontational, but anyway. Controversial, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. So I'm thinking about, the field, cybersecurity. We protect some pretty critical assets and data and people, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm trying to draw an analogy. First, I'm trying to understand what is a neurodiverse person, and I'm sure there's a scale. And where on that scale is it kind of acceptable to have people in this sort of, looking after critical infrastructure, for example. So the only analogy I can really think of is if I was admitted into a hospital and I needed surgery performed on me, how would I feel about a neurodiverse person performing that surgery? And I know that potentially could be a little bit confrontational, but I think this is all about having a discussion, yeah?
There's a TV show about that, just in case.
Yeah, I love that. The Good Doctor.
Yeah, the good doctor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I want him to
So
operate on me.
You want him, yeah.
Eidetic memory.
Well, I'd probably argue that a lot of surgeons and similar might well be neurodiverse.
On the scale.
But they
kind of-
weren't,
Yeah.
if you went back 20, 30 years, people weren't labelled as that, right? So there wasn't a label for autism or what's the other,
ADHD, dysmorphia.
No,
the savant, what's the...
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Savant.
It's a label, and
Yeah.
we like to label things. And I think if we look at it through the lens of just tolerance and openness and in embracing everyone's differences, that's probably the best way to do it.
But 1 in 5 people are actually neurodiverse. But on a scale, how do we label it? Just people who don't conform to the basis of society, people
Yeah.
who are slightly different. But I think if we were all cut from the same piece of cloth, the world would be such a boring place. Like, I reckon me and Suraj, we already know we're slightly on the spectrum. But in a fun way. But we all have different strengths to bring to the table,
And I think it's important that it is getting traction as well, because even if you look at ADHD studies, for example, in the last few years, experts have noticed that women, for example, in their mid-20s to late 40s, are now starting to be diagnosed more frequently with ADHD. And you kind of wonder, well, was all the previous research mostly about men and male studies? So now that we're starting to understand better how ADHD presents in women, we can actually help them, get the environment and set them up in an environment that supports them and get them the help that they need. Because if people are working in an environment where they have to mask how they actually want to behave and feel comfortable behaving, they may suffer from low self-esteem and mental health problems. So it's about giving them that space.
I've got a good story actually about ADHD. So my best friend, been friends with him since we were in high school, and he was diagnosed with ADHD at about 30 years old. And by this point, he had a really successful business. He laid about 30% of the NBN, the business that he set up, ran most of the NBN for Australia. And he got diagnosed with ADD later in life. And when he started being medicated for it, it was like, as soon as I started medicating myself, I took away my superpower. My superpower was I could have hundreds of things going on in my brain when I needed them to, and I could focus when I needed to. But there was always all this stuff when I started medicating myself for ADD. It took all of that away. It took away all the noise, but it took away my superpower. So it's quite interesting, because I'd probably argue that particularly in technical roles, whether it's cybersecurity, any other IT role, there's a very high percentage of people that are at some level on the spectrum. And if you were to look at famous people, I'm sure that Elon Musk would identify as being on the spectrum. And if, say, somebody like that, who's an innovator, had been diagnosed early in life and been labelled as something, would they then have not gone down that pathway? You'd never know, right?
Yeah.
So,
Might it have been a blocker?
yeah.
Just depends on the quality of life, I guess. Is it, interfering with your ability to flourish or, to be the best selves? Like, me and my husband are medicated as well, but it's a good thing because it controls our anxiety. But we need to be aware, is this medication working for stresses, or is it actually dulling everything? But having these discussions are good, because then, people are aware that mental health, are all issues that shouldn't be a taboo. And when, talking about it, you're spreading awareness about this is so important to foster an inclusive and welcoming space for people just to be themselves.
And what do you
Well
think what do you think could be done in the work environment to support neurodiverse people and help them succeed?
I'm actually very passionate about this one. So I'm actually really proud of the work that we do in Capgemini. So I'm in a neurodiversity speaker, and also for the parent and carer community. So we actually get together once a month, and we hold Teams calls for hundreds of our colleagues. And we talk about, very sensitive topics like depression, Tourette's, OCD. And then people are like, oh yeah, I can resonate with that. But just talking about it, removing that stigma, like it's a bad thing. It's not exactly a bad thing. People need to know on how to make our colleagues feel better. So we would say hi team, we have some neurodiverse members in the call today. Feel free to say hi. So for someone with autism, this is called steaming. So they have a neuro sort of misfiring. So they have a lot of nervous energy in their limbs. So sometimes if you're masking, they're holding, holding stable the whole day. It's exhausting. By just letting out the energy, is like, hi team, how are you today? Would you like to lower the lights, or would you like to lower the volume of the calls? Feel free to make yourself feel comfortable, because I'm quite sensitive to noise, so I actually wear hollow out earplugs, but that probably just mutes out my husband and kids on purpose, but you know. But yeah, it's just talking about it, or just making people feel welcome. They can be like, yeah, I feel good today. I'm going to bring value to my team. And that's the environment we want to create, you know, just let people be their best selves.
So education and inclusiveness. Yeah.
Education, inclusiveness, awareness, just talking, being relatable, I guess.
I'd use the analogy of aces in their places. So recruitment's a sales job. There's certain people that are suited to certain roles, right? So if we were to take somebody who's really strong on analytics and then you put them in a situation that they're not comfortable with, for example, being on a stage in front of people and presenting, that wouldn't be the best use of their skill set. And vice versa for me, putting me in a room and having me crunch numbers all day instead of talking to people would not be using me to my strength. So I'd say that the way that you balance that is you put people into the right roles that suit them and have realistic expectations based on the people and have some allowances for that. That's probably the easiest way, I would think.
Yeah, I like that approach, and it taps into your key strengths as well, building a stronger team together.
Aces in places.
Yes.
I like it. It's true, though. Jasmine did round out the chattiest and funnest group today to be on the panel. She's like, yeah. Vicky,
Yeah.
Luke.
So let's move to gender, because gender is obviously a very important topic to myself and to all of us on stage, and I'm sure in the room as well. Women in security is getting a lot more traction and a lot more support, which I'm very happy about. What I would like to touch on, though, is, do you think we're going about it the right way? Do you think we're supporting women in the right way? And I would like to start with you, Ricky. And in recruitment, you live and breathe KPIs, and probably around, you know, hiring a certain number of women in leadership roles as well. Do you think that approach is the right way? And are we really supporting and promoting equality?
So I'll choose my words carefully here, right? Because I don't want to offend anybody. And I'll use, again, I like using analogies. I'll use an analogy for a client that we recruit for, right? They're a global financial services business. I'll say that broadly so they can't be identified. And they have a diversity goal to reach 40% females across all role families within their business. Now, just for anybody that doesn't know the numbers, females in cybersecurity in Australia is about 18%, somewhere 17 or 18%. So if you are now trying to get to parity or almost parity of females, you need to more than double what the percentage of the industry is to meet that. How can you do that? And I'll give an example which I think is the reverse way to go about it correctly. Hey, look, we have a really heavy female team. We would love to get a female into this role. However, if they aren't available, we'll select best person. Okay, no problem. Send forward my shortlist of profiles. The only people that got interviewed were female. Now, is that diversity? I'd argue that it's the reverse. And the counter argument I would make would be if somebody was hiring only to put men into that role, that would be considered as discrimination. So I'd almost argue that's not the right way to go about it. I think what the studies that are out there talk to is females like working with strong female leadership, and they like having their voice heard. So I think the best way for a business to increase the gender split is to hire well at the top level and make sure that they've got a voice and that they're heard. Heaps of data out there around a male would put their hand up for a promotion if they had 2 out of 10 skills required. For a female, they might need 7 or 8 before they feel comfortable to put their hand up. Men will put their hand up. Female will wait to be asked. So there's a lot of little nuances that can be done to move the needle. To talk more broadly, like there's great groups. There's the Australian Women in Security Network, which has been in place for a few years. That's really good at just raising awareness and trying to get more females into the industry. I don't know if that's answered your question.
No, definitely.
I had a question. we've all heard the phrase, it's a man's world. I know it's dying, thankfully.
I'm gonna
But
kick him later.
that strikes me as, men have been supported from a very young age, pretty much since birth, and then nurtured into careers and whatnot. But there's been this massive support structure built around men. For diversity, in any profession, really, I would almost argue that there needs to be a similar support structure for women from childhood and nurturing and giving them the courage and helping them find their voice. So I don't think it would necessarily come down to this, this quota of let's just meet diversity and, as long as the numbers match up, then wow, we're a happy little society. I think it needs to go a lot deeper than that, and we need to maybe take it a little bit more seriously than we are.
And also, it's not only just about hiring women in the roles, but retaining them. And the retention numbers at a lot of firms is not great for women in leadership roles. And sometimes you look at, maybe it's certain cultural things or certain behaviours in the workplace which makes them not want to stick around. So, it's a good point. And the other point around supporting women and like it's a man's world, and how can we best support women earlier on in their careers? Because we can have these KPIs and we can put women in powerful, leadership positions, but if they don't have the foundation to perform, they're going to get into those roles and they're going to struggle, and then it's going to set a bad precedent for other women who want to go into those leadership roles. So I've got a question for you, Luke. What do you think can also be done maybe earlier on in a woman's career, particularly around STEM, for example, like supporting of STEM?
I've got an analogy actually. I'm just thinking about everyone's comments here. And my analogy, I'd like to think of something recent. We're just looking at the elite sort of performances of our Australian women in the Olympics that we've just had. And if I look at, and that was across the board, but if I look at the swimming, for example, what they did there to achieve that elite status, and to have so many athletes at that level and success, the seeds for Ariane Titmus and Emma McEwen was sown, 15 years ago. So to your point about doing things early on in the piece, having a role model. So, I can't think back 15 years ago to those swimmers, unfortunately, but they had their own role models they were seeing on TV. So in a cybersecurity sense, having not so much role models, but somebody coming into schools or early on when you're forming your career and having someone to look up to. So that's what I could draw a parallel there. And then from there, say for example, so the Ariane Titmuses of the world, they had the people to look up to, and then they got a coach, and the coach really looked after them and developed them in their career early. So we need mentors on the cybersecurity side of things. Like that's a good coach. And then obviously we need programs and facilities and investment. Just like a swimmer does, they need all that sort of stuff around them. We need to have a support system there so that they're on the best level playing field when they get into their career, into the workforce. And then once they're in there, a network and a community. So I know there are communities and networks for women, AWSN, for example, where you can get in there. I know it's a great organisation and they can feel part of a group and have support there. So, and I suppose in an Olympic setting, that's like having a team around you. So if we can mirror that, and then we might have some success down the track.
And I could talk to some statistics around workforces. So if we were to do a subset of cybersecurity talent in Australia and break it down to the early careers people, so like 0 to 5 years experience, it's about 30% of all people in those jobs are female. So the needle is moving. Unfortunately, the data points don't exist for 25 years ago to be able to compare over time. But certainly it's moving in the right direction. And then, so if we took that subset and then went to the next 5 years, the percentage drops. And then you go to executive level or 15 plus years experience and it drops again. And that might be down to 13 or 14% off the top of my head. So it's quite low. But if you look in 20 years from now, you might find that there's 25 to 30% of industry are female just because there's new talent coming in. So
I'm going to do a mom thing and go over and turn my phone off. I've muted it, but actually that's my pickup daughter alarm. I'm so sorry.
So to that point, flexible workplaces are important.
Yeah.
And it's not just from a female perspective, it's from a male perspective. We need to balance the load with our family and have a flexible workplace, and that helps keep women in the workplace in a longer and
does.
succeed. So
Sorry, guys. That was a 2 o'clock pick up Chloe and then 3:30 pick up Charlotte. My bad.
You're organised.
Spot. We have to be. It's kind of funny though. I have a mom's group at school, and we always find there's always a default parent that if the kid is sick, the first thing they do is call mom. And then I actually started picking up a call like, I'm busy, mom's working, call dad, hang up. Well, it's like this.
fair's
stuff that we-
fair. Just share it around.
Yeah, we got to spread the load. It's like moms are working, dads are working now. It's all important because I don't want my children to stay at home like I did and just be like, oh, you got to pick up the kids, you got to work. I want to have a fruitful career too. I want to come to Sydney and meet peers. And yeah, I'm going to send them videos when I go home. And I think they'll be so proud of me.
Yeah. That actually is a good segue into career diversity. So we've got a little bit of time left, and I would like to get into this topic because as someone who has not had the most traditional path to cybersecurity, I do understand the value of bringing, say, with me, neuroscience, understanding how people think, and then law, and working as a lawyer, I understand how to analyze risk. So those are skill sets that have definitely helped me in my career in security. Constance, you have a very, very cool background in your career with your retail, real estate, business development, and you were a chef as well.
Yeah, my career path hasn't been a straight one. My degree was actually in restaurant and culinary management because I'm a big foodie. And with that degree, I went on to open several cafes and restaurants in Malaysia. And then I met my husband and we were expatriated to Europe and Asia for 7 years. So we actually started remote working before it was a thing. We'll be like in Budapest, Italy and all that. So we got to meet a lot of his different colleagues around the world. But I was bored. I was like, I needed something to do. So we started a real estate investment business where we invest in blue chip and rental yield properties. And those skills were so valuable for me when I came into consulting. It's like I understood business planning, project management, financial sheets, and it really helped me resonate and to understand what KPIs my team needed. And also, but I think the most pivotal moment in my career was, becoming a mother. I actually think that mothers make great cybersecurity experts. We have enhanced threat hunting capabilities. We're so good at sniffing out risks. Our intuitions are off the charts. We work tremendously under pressure, financial pressure, time pressure. Like, who gets stuff done? Moms get stuff.
Sleep deprivation too.
I haven't slept in 6 years. But we do what we got to do, and we thrive. So we definitely do need more women in cybersecurity. So I always tell people, me and Jasmine are the most beautiful women in cybersecurity because there's only the both of us in the office. Well, once we have more women, I can't throw that label around anymore. But it works for now. But yeah, all these skills were so transferable, and I think that helped us bond as well. Yeah, you're always asking me what did I do back then, and you're like, wow, okay, come and look at this Excel sheet. So I was like, I'll get it. Oh my God, I hope my husband picked up Chloe. Ridiculous.
So, well, I might move to you, Siraj, just around qualifications. So, if you have taken, say, a non-traditional path and maybe you didn't take a security qualification, maybe you didn't study security, do you think you can still be successful in the industry?
Yeah, I'm not to sound arrogant, but I'm proof of that. So I have a high school education. I was never really cut out for university. I have this. I push back at people telling me what I need to learn. I'm pretty sure I could learn myself. So kind of taught myself. And I think, again, that's given me a completely different perspective because I don't think inside the conventional boundaries. There's always this, well, what if I come at it from a different angle? Or I think one that I come across a lot across my career is when you approach, or when there's a problem and you're looking for a solution and you ask people, why is it that way? And well, it's because it's always been that way. And then they just work within those confines. And you can come at it from a completely different perspective and almost reinvent the wheel. And people say you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I would actually argue you do. But so I don't think qualifications are necessary, not just in our profession. Yeah, I'd say in life in general, I think that one of the biggest talents or gifts human beings have is the ability to teach yourself. And you've got the internet, you've got YouTube. And I renovated a house watching YouTube. Made lots of mistakes, cost me a lot of money, but I learnt a lot. Yeah. And yeah.
You are very switched on. I always thought about that about you since we met last year. He's always asking why, and then gets me to thinking too.
I've got something to share on that. So if you were talking about university degrees or tertiary education, I think within cybersecurity roles, I'd probably say there's three priorities if you're a hiring manager. People normally look for experience first. If you don't have direct experience, do you have relevant industry certifications? So, depending on the role, you mentioned that Constance does SOC SIEM related work. Do you have Splunk certifications? Have you learnt how to do that particular technology? Mm-hmm. And then after that would be university or tertiary education. I think you can make it. Cybersecurity is maybe the one industry that you can go a really long way with none of those things, as long as you've got the curiosity, if you will, to learn. Without that, I don't think you can make a success, regardless of your educational background.
I'm proof of that. I did a certificate 4 in cybersecurity when I was pregnant during COVID. But along the way, I've gotten a lot of IBM, Splunk, Microsoft certifications, Qualys certifications, and I actually find that really helps because it's applicable knowledge. It's like day-to-day, the stuff that I use. So, yeah, it's good to know we don't need a super master's degree to get into that, but that just got to keep learning, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really dependent on what you want to do in the security industry. Like if you want to get more into the SOC ops scene, or you want to get more into GRC, or you want to be more involved in leading a large team and knowing how to manage a large team of SMEs, for example, and that skill set, or you want to work through commercial contracts, or there's a whole range of things you can do in cybersecurity, which is, it makes it a very, very multifaceted career.
Yeah, she did make me learn the NIST and ISO framework back to back.
I'm a hard taskmaster. So I am conscious of time. Luke?
No, the final point on that was just there is a broad spectrum of different tasks and roles in cybersecurity, hence why diversity is very important.
Yes. Yeah. And reflecting on the panel today, and thank you, thank you, Ricky, Constance, Siraj, and Luke for your time today. I think reflecting on what we talked about around career, neurodiversity, gender diversity, and cultural diversity, we can see the importance of supporting that, because not only brings a diverse team, but also helps us to be more innovative and to think outside the box. And the reason why I like to think outside the box and encourage others to do that is because threat actors are not all the same. They're very diverse. And if we need to think like an attacker and be one step ahead, we need to be equally diverse, if not more. So by talking about this, and thank you for everyone who's come today and supported this panel, it makes it much easier for us to be more successful as an Australian, more successful in the industry, and also set Australia up as a global leader in cybersecurity as well. I would like to open the floor for questions.
Uh-oh.
Don't be shy.
We have one there.
Oh, yes.
Can we get a microphone down here? Thank you. I'll just ask a question while we do that. That's come in through the app. This is from Chemray. What is the best practice for creating an inclusive and supportive environment for LGBT+ employees to foster innovation in the workplace?
Does anyone want to take this one, or happy for me to? Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. I think awareness is a very important approach, and making sure that people can come to work. One of the policies we have at Capgemini, and not here to pump Capgemini at all, but one of the policies we have is that in terms of dressing as well, like you can dress and be comfortable as long as it's professional, but you dress to be comfortable. So it's about bringing your whole self to work and being proud of who you are. So we often have events as well. We have a number of events throughout the year, and we get together and we talk about like sometimes topics that people may be too shy to ask about, and questions that people might be too embarrassed to ask about. So I think having that awareness and education is definitely a first step. Does anyone else want to add, or I can keep? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'll just echo your sentiments and just say, add to it and saying, and back to my first point is, I use the word tolerance, and that's probably not the right word. Like that's like you're just tolerating someone, but understanding and being comfortable with people once you're educated.
Probably
and
acceptance
informed.
would be the word.
Acceptance is the better word. Thank you. Yeah.
Maybe I don't understand the question, but they're just people. There's no, there doesn't need to be a whole framework in how you deal with people that identify a certain way. They're just people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Short, sweet, and simple. That gets you thinking, right? I told you he's deep.
Gaurav, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, my question was primarily around diversity at the board level. Quite often we see diversity getting pushed down to senior management or even exec level, but still a lot of boards are primarily male. And to your point, we just lose diversity at different sets of opinions and experiences. Do you guys see changing where you work? Do you in the industry?
Luke, you can probably answer this well.
From a governance risk and compliance assessment back, looking at the skills, so there's always been a good idea to have a range of skills on your board, and I can speak to that in terms of now if I'm going in and looking at an organisation and assessing if they're doing the right things. If they don't have someone on the board that is cyber aware and cyber savvy, so they've got someone that looks after the finance, they've got someone that's so on and so forth, the different operational people. If they don't have a cyber person, whether they're female, male, whatever it may be, that diversity is important. So yeah, I can speak to it from that perspective.
I'd like
You
to
go, Suraj. I've got something to say too. You go.
just with in my perspective, the board is still a very masculine place, and I'm making a clear distinction between male, the gender, and masculinity. So if you take a female or a woman and then put her in that very masculine environment, in order for her to survive, she's going to have to adopt a lot of this masculinity, aggression and whatever silly games that get played in the board. So I don't think it's a matter of just airdropping a lady into that sort of masculine environment. There needs to be deep systemic change, which I don't think that'll start in the board. I think this is more of a societal, long-term play.
And I think as well, to your point about putting them in an environment that's quite, aggressive in that sense, I think it does definitely retain a certain type of woman who can be really quite tough and outspoken and bubbly. And so, for someone like myself who's quite robust, and I've got an older brother who I've grown up with and hung out with his friends, and he studied science and I studied science. So I kind of always thought, even though I look feminine, I've always felt like one of the boys. But in that sense, it's only retaining a certain type of woman and a certain type of femininity. And what about women who are softly spoken and women who they have brilliant ideas just as outspoken women do? So I definitely agree that it's not about popping them in, but it's about changing the environment that we're popping women in.
Are there any more questions from the floor before we move on? Right. Thank you very much to our entire panel, Jasmine Logaraj, Constance Yap, Ricky Block, Suraj, and Luke. Thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thank
you.
Thank you all.